Imagine a world where countries stop fighting over oil, not because oil is no longer important, but because something even more strategic has replaced oil. The next global resource war is not about crude oil, it is about critical minerals. Lithium, rare earths, graphite, nickel, cobalt, and the powerful magnets that makes electric vehicles, wind turbines, fighter jets, missiles, robotics, and AI data center work. Today, one country dominates almost the entire value chain. That country is China. And now, the world's largest economies are scrambling to reduce their dependence on China. The G7 summit, which was recently hosted in France, has launched a new critical mineral alliance. The United States is proposing floor pricing mechanisms to counter Chinese price manipulations. Russia possesses some of the world's largest untapped rare earth reserves, and India is quietly building a strategy that stretches from Siberia to Australia, Argentina, Serbia, and Africa. In this video, we will try to understand why critical minerals have become the new oil, why these G7 countries are worried, why India is investing 3,000 crores in processing, and how Russia's rare earth reserves could play a crucial role in India's future. Let's begin. For the ease of understanding of viewers, we have divided this video into chapters. Well, to start with chapter 1, the new oil of the 21st century. Every major technology of the future depends on critical minerals. If you want electric vehicles, you need lithium, nickel, cobalt, and graphite. If you want battery energy storages, you need lithium and rare earths. If you want wind turbines, you need neodymium magnets. You want semiconductors, you will need such multiple strategic minerals. And if you are concerned about the security and defense infrastructure, if you want fighter aircrafts, missiles, and advanced defense systems, you need rare earth elements. Even artificial intelligence infrastructure and hyperscale data centers depend on technologies that require critical minerals. In simple terms, no energy transition is possible without critical minerals. No advanced manufacturing is possible without critical minerals. Neither the technological superpower can emerge without these critical minerals. And this is where the global problem begins. Well, talking of problems, and we do not discuss China. China's extraordinary dominance is what we cover in our chapter 2. Most people think mining is the most important part of the supply chain. Actually, it is not. The real power lies in what happens after mining. The mineral must be separated, refined, processed, and converted into alloys. And finally, transformation is required in these high value industrial products. China understood this decades ago. While many countries focused on extraction of minerals, China focused on building these entire critical mineral value supply chain. Also, today the numbers are staggering. According to International Energy Agency, China controls approximately 59% of global rare earth mining, 91% of global rare earth refining, and an astonishing 94% of rare earth magnet manufacturing comes from China. Think about these numbers for a moment. Even if another country discovers rare earth deposits, it may still need China to process and manufacture the final products. That is where the strategic dependency lies. This is not merely resource dominance, it is value chain dominance. Well, this brings us to why the G7 countries are so worried about all of this, and we are covering it in chapter 3. At the recent G7 summit, leaders launched a new strategic alliance on critical minerals. The objective is clear: reduce dependence on highly concentrated supply chain, build alternative mining capacities, develop processing and refining infrastructure, and create strategic stockpiles, and strengthen the existing supply chain resilience around these critical minerals. Interestingly, the declaration never directly attacks China, but everyone understands the concern. The G7 specifically referred to economic coercion, export restrictions, non market practices, and vulnerabilities created by excessive concentration. The concern is simple: if one country controls most of the processing and manufacturing capacity, global industries become exposed to disruption. Whether those disruptions arise from geopolitics, trade disputes, export controls, or market intervention. For the G7, critical minerals have now become an economic security issue and increasingly a national security issue. While discussing all of this, let us focus on the China factor. The chapter 4 discusses the China factor in greater details. China strongly rejects all these allegations. Beijing instead argues that its export controls are legitimate. Chinese officials says countries should respect market principles and international trade rules instead of forming exclusive blocs and alliances. However, Western nations sees things differently. The United States Congress has argued that China has developed a decade-long strategy to dominate critical minerals. According to a bipartisan investigation, China treats critical minerals not simply as commodities but as strategic geopolitical assets. The report alleges that China regulates frameworks, allows significant influence over pricing and market behavior. Whether one agrees or disagrees with these claims, one fact remains undisputed: China today is the dominant force in critical mineral, and the rest of the world are just trying to catch up with China. Well, we have discussed so many countries, especially around China, US, Russia, and the G7 countries. Where do India stand? India has a paradox situation right now. Let's discuss this in chapter 5. Now let's bring India into this entire story of critical minerals. India possesses approximately 7.23 million tons of rare earth reserves. That makes India one of the world's most resource-rich countries in terms of rare earth potential. Yet, India remains dependent on imports for several critical rare earth products. Why is it so? Because possessing reserves is not enough. India currently lacks commercial scale rare earth separation and refining facilities. More importantly, India does not yet have a large scale rare earth magnet manufacturing industry. This creates a paradox. India has resources, but not the complete value chain. And this is exactly what policymakers are trying to change. Well, this is done by the National Critical Mineral Mission of India, and we are covering it in chapter 6. India's response is this National Critical Mineral Mission, often referred to as NCMM. This mission is designed to create a comprehensive ecosystem around critical minerals. The objective is not just mining, the objective is complete strategic independence. India has already identified 30 critical minerals considering essential for economic growth, industrial competitiveness, energy security, and national security. The mission focuses on domestic exploration, mining, processing, refining, technology development, recycling, strategic stockpiling, and international partnerships. The goal is simple: ensure India does not become vulnerable to future supply disruptions. Well, this is supported by India's 3,000 crore processing push. One of the most important recent development in India's proposed 3000 crore critical mineral processing scheme. This may prove more important than mining itself. Why? Because the real bottleneck is processing. China became dominant not merely because it mined minerals. China became dominant because it built refining and processing infrastructure. India now appears determined not to repeat the mistake made by many resource rich countries. The proposed scheme aims to support processing facilities, refining capacity, technological development, and domestic value addition to help the supply chain resilience. This represents a major shift in India's strategy from resource acquisition to value chain creation. Well, we initially discussed about Russia-India partnerships. Again, let's start why Russia matters. This is covered under chapter 8. Well, India-Russia relationships have been further strengthened with India's recent strategic move wherein India's state-owned company Indian Rare Earth Limited is reportedly evaluating rare earth opportunities in Russia. Particularly the Tomtor deposit located in Yakutia, Siberia. Tomtor is widely considered one of the world's largest undeveloped rare earth deposits. IREL is currently in discussion with Rosneft regarding the mineral composition and commercial potential of these resources. Samples are expected to undergo processing and evaluation before commercial decisions are taken. This development follows agreement reached during the Indian-Russian summit to strengthen cooperation in critical minerals and rare earth. For India, this is about securing future supplies, but for Russia, it's about attracting strategic partners in terms of manufacturing and scaling up the manufacturing facility, which India has potential to do so. Now let's talk about the perspective of India's global mineral diplomacy in chapter 9. Russia is only one piece of much larger strategy. IREL is also exploring opportunities in countries like Argentina, Australia, Malawi, and Serbia. This diversification is extremely important. India does not want dependence on any single geography. The objective is similar to India's energy security strategy. Multiple suppliers, multiple geographies, multiple partnerships, and greater resilience. The future of critical minerals will not be determined by one mine, it will be determined by diversified supply chain. Well, what's the real price? The real price are the permanent magnets. Let us try to deep dive in chapter 10. But the biggest story is not mining, it is the rare earth magnets, and these are among the most important industrial products in the world. These magnets power your electric vehicle motors, wind turbines, robotics, industrial automation, missile guided systems, and fighter aircrafts, and of course the advanced defense technologies. Today, China controls around 94% of global rare earth magnet manufacturing. This is why India is moving beyond mining. Recent partnerships involving Russian institutions Nexon, Geocam, Texmin are exploring rare earth processing technologies and neodymium iron boron magnet manufacturing. These magnets, known as NdFeB magnets, are among the strongest permanent magnets ever developed. Whoever controls these technologies controls the future of advanced manufacturing. Well, let's circle it back with India's 2030 vision, and this is our chapter 11. IREL plans to begin domestic rare earth magnet manufacturing between 2029 and 2030. If successful, India would build an integrated ecosystem covering mining, processing, separation, refining, alloy production, and magnet manufacturing. In addition to that, we will also produce advanced industrial application based various products. Very few countries currently possess such end-to-end capabilities. This is India's long-term ambition. So to conclude this entire discussion, the battle for critical minerals had already begun. The G7 wants diversified supply chain. China wants to preserve its strategic advantage. Russia possesses vast untapped resources, and India is trying to build an entirely new critical mineral ecosystem. From overseas minings in Russia, Argentina, Australia, and Africa to domestic processing to rare earth magnet manufacturing, India is preparing for a future where economic power will increasingly depend on control over critical minerals value chain. The question is no longer whether critical minerals will shape up global geopolitics. The question is whether India can move fast enough to become a major global player before the next industrial revolution accelerates. If you found this analysis useful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe the Chetan Pathak vlogs. Thank you for watching. Jai Hind.